Good morning once again, and thank you for staying tuned to Sunrise at Sea right here on CTV. I hope you're having a wonderful start to your day. And if you just tuned in, well, hello there. How are you? How is your day? Are you okay? My name is Apollo Sarah, and in studio with me is my colleague Aggie Wase.
Good morning, Sarah.
Hi, Aggie.
I don't know, this, I don't know if people can see it. I love it.
I woke up in such a good mood today. Today is going to be a good day.
I love that.
Absolutely.
Attitude.
Yes.
Yeah,
so
attitude.
Welcome to the Twitter Jabs. And what we do here is quite simple. We bring you all the trending conversations that are happening on social media, in particular Twitter, and we bring you all the mixed reactions from legislators, from stakeholders, and everybody in between. Everybody who has something to say about the conversation, we talk about it. And today we are going to be discussing the police welfare. Well, a lawyer in Kampala has taken government to court over poor housing conditions for police officers, most of whom he says live in depleted housing structures. He goes on to say in the lawsuit that was filed before High Court against the country's Attorney General, that is Mr. Kalali Stephen, warns government to declare that the poor accommodation structures availed to some police officers by the respondent, who that is government, and her agencies infringes on the officers' right to dignity of human persons and privacy and family.
Now, this is a very big concern because we also see in the recent past, and that was March this year, 2022, the Speaker of Parliament, and that is Right Honorable Mong Anita, did speak up on the welfare of police officers and say that it needs to be addressed urgently. She did express her concern while commenting about the late Robert Weyamba, who is a police officer who passed on and who was a dedicated police officer. And she went on to say that the welfare of police officers has to be addressed as a matter of urgency because the situation at Nsambya, and that is Nsambya Barracks, is worrying, among other barracks in this country.
Exactly. There's also Naguru Barracks, I beg your pardon. There's also Old Kampala. There are so many in really the most unfortunate circumstances. We actually have some pictures of some of the housing that some of the police officers are living in. As you can see, they're living in depleted, rotting, and falling apart
buildings. That is a very dire state to live in.
Exactly. Well, the attorney, or rather the lawyer that is taking government to court, also says that he also wants a declaration that the continued poor habitation of police officers in ramshackled buildings, structures infringes on their right to stay in a clean and healthy environment and development.
And also we see that the Public Finance Management Act and the Budget Act give the ultimate power to allocate public finances in the national budget to Parliament, and this is where the Right Honourable Speaker was saying that Parliament needs to do their best to ensure that the welfare of police officers is handled as a matter of priority in the budgets as they, are in process.
But this is not the first time that government or Parliament has made promises to improve the living conditions of our police officers, our dear police and law enforcers in our country. There have been promises made since 2012, in 2014 the same, in 2016 the same. But one thing that really stood out to me the most, in November of 2012, a number of spouses and children of police officers took to the streets to riot and protest against the poor housing conditions of the police officers and in which that they were living in. They also went on to hold the Assistant Inspector General of Assistant Inspector General of Police at the time, that is the late Andrew Kawesa, at ransom, and they refused to let him leave. They held him, in talks for over an hour, about 2 hours, and made him vow and promise that their conditions were going to change. Later on, the then Inspector General of Police, that is Lieutenant General Kale Kaihura, swung into action, and he instead went there by himself and conducted a few days cleaning process to ensure that the services and some of the renovations are actually being done at the police, where the police live. But as you can see, nothing has really been done.
I don't think the cleaning bit of it is just enough. I think it's a whole restructure, if I should call it that, because in the recent past, I remember there's a time I was having a conversation with certain, colleagues, and they talked about maybe the reason why police actually are brutalizing Ugandans is the fact that they are frustrated, because at the end of the day, these things do go in hand in hand.
Exactly.
So if you're frustrated, you're living in dire conditions, corruption, it's very difficult for you to actually do the right thing.
Exactly, and also corruption. Perhaps if they would just improve on their housing and just give them the money that is allocated to them, perhaps then things like corruption, because the police has been named one of the most corrupt institution in the country, and this has been for a number of years in a row. But anyway, the Assistant Inspector General of Police, now let's fast forward to 2022, that is of May 1st, and that is Andrew Sorowen, has assured officers of maximum support and improved welfare to enable them access improved standards of living less. You know what, put a pin in that. Let's read some reactions from social media, and then we'll get back into it. So our first tweet comes in from Chapter 4 Uganda, and it says, police arrests a woman for protesting the poor living conditions of Police Uganda officers and their families in Uganda. Thank you at UPPA Award for the incredible collection of powerful photos on our office walls. We'll share a few. They definitely went on to share a number of pictures of the protests at the time.
Our next tweet comes from Suna King James, and it says, what if I lead a peaceful demonstration in Kampala against poor living conditions of Uganda police officers? Should I expect support from my police colleagues? Hashtag police living conditions matter.
Absolutely, they definitely
Maybe we should actually see, you know, the whole police, is it a crew, but like the whole department, you know, take to the streets, and maybe they also demonstrate.
You know, it will be very ironic.
It will be. Yes, it will be ironic.
They would be doing something very illegal, and I think there will be absolute dire repercussions for them if they took that route.
A peaceful demonstration would do.
But however, I think that they have better ways to approach them. But I think it's about time that these promises are fulfilled. I mean, it's promises that have been made since 2012, 2014, 2016. We're now in 2020, and we're still talking about the same thing. It's absolutely just devastating. Our next tweet comes in from CPJ Africa, and it says, hashtag Uganda. Police in Kampala briefly detained 6 journalists yesterday after the reporters went to cover alleged poor conditions under which foreign students at Makerere University are living amidst the hashtag COVID-19 pandemic, according to a Human Rights Network for Journalists in Uganda.
Our next tweet comes from Omusumba wa Uganda, and he says, I find this hilarious. Every police officer in Uganda is living in poor conditions, and here we are applauding them. It's
absolutely just
devastating. And when we are, you know, to see police, there is shillings 916 billion police budget. That was in the last financial year, and most of it, 172.6 billion was allocated for surveillance and acquisition of firepower to deal with civil disobedience, but spares only 94.4 billion shillings for police officers' welfare, with only 18 of every 100 police officers able to get accommodation, leaving a housing gap of 49,422 units. And the report also goes on to say that officers and their families at Nsambya Police Barracks, and that is the country's biggest barracks, by the way, ended the last financial year in pain. They spent the last 2 months of the financial year in a blackout.
Exactly.
No power, nothing.
And let's talk about the salaries, should we? Or it's just to depress us even more?
It's a little bit too much.
Exactly. But to continue on what the Inspector General of Police, that is Andrew Sorowen, did say, and he made these revelations because he did promise that government is going to fulfill its promises, and he made the revelation during a groundbreaking ceremony of the construction of the parking yard for trucks that deliver building materials at Nsambya duty-free headquarters in Kampala. He went on to retaliate, and he promised that the government has allocated funds to spearhead this process to all the armed officers and police inclusive. So basically what this is, that the duty-free shop has 12 branches throughout the country where officers can go and access building materials at a cheaper cost so that they are able to build their own houses or housing. But how is the question, all right?
Will that be effective?
But how are they going to do it if you cannot already give them you know, things that they are entitled to, like for instance, better salaries or better improved, you know, living conditions. But anyway, moving on to our next tweet comes in from Haji Musa K, and he says, but female police officers are living in the poor conditions in the barracks. Rwanda has built new barracks, 35 years on new accommodations, but you have new renovated state lodges across Uganda. Where is good leadership?
Our next tweet comes from Evelyn Leary, and he says, wives of Uganda's police officers have today staged a second demonstration protesting delayed salary of their husbands and poor living conditions. And also similarly, officers at Naguru Police Barracks, and that is the second biggest police accommodation facility, face the same challenges as the ones in Zambia and other barracks in the country. The officers' tap water supply was rationed for the better part of the period, and that was in the budget of 2021-2022. Although power and water were switched on, I think it was last year in July.
Yes.
But still, till this day, they are complaining about water supply. They're complaining about power supply. It shouldn't be something that's recurring, because at the end of the day, how do you expect, you know, police officers to wake up in time to go and, you know, do their work when they do not have power, they do not have water?
But these are people that work for the states. They are public servants. So I believe it is supposed to be the government's responsibility
part of their budget, police
to take
budget.
care
So
of
what
them.
happens
Exactly.
to that money?
So we need answers, and we'll be getting those answers in part 2 of the Twitter Jab. Stay tuned, you don't want to miss that. But moving on to the next tweet, and comes in, and this is comes in from a gentleman called Dr. Wolfgang H. Thom, and he says, and their husbands arrested them and then let them off against the bribe of a chicken dinner and cold beer. It's a very sarcastic response. Rather hilarious, but again sad at the same time.
Our next tweet is a picture. As you can see, it's very evident that the police and, you know, their wives and their families, their kids are living in a dire condition in this country. Something needs to be done anytime soon.
All right. Well, that's all we had for you in this segment of the Twitter Jabs one, but I'll be continuing this conversation with our guest today to give us more insight into what government is doing and how serious this condition is for our police officers and lawmakers in the country. But coming up before that is our wellness segment, and Agi Uwase continues the conversation on the importance of having exercise, eating well, and sleeping enough, or rather sleeping well. This is Sunrise at Sea. Don't blink.